thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
Is this the title?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC and UCLA are back on the court tonight in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Both are at home for second-round games. UCLA takes on Creighton, 5:30 tip-off on ESPN2. The winner advances to the Sweet 16 to face defending national champion LSU in the Albany Regional. USC and Juju Watkins play Kansas tonight. Another sellout crowd is expected at the Galen Center, 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. The winner advances to the Sweet 16 in the Portland Regional. Arizona is the only Pac-12 conference team left in the NCAA men's tournament. Arizona has a Sweet 16 matchup Thursday night against Clemson at Crypto.com. Crypto is the site of the West Regional Finals. The Clippers are expecting to have Russell Westbrook back for tonight's home game against Indiana. Westbrook missed the last 12 games with a broken left hand. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
Reparations Now has been a rallying cry in this country and around the world for decades. But the demand has taken on new urgency with growing momentum on the issue led by the state of California, which has completed an extensive study and put forth recommendations to enact reparations. California's reparations actions have huge nationwide implications. The California Task Force was the first of its kind in the nation, and the states of New York and Colorado recently voted to take on the issue. Dozens of cities from coast to coast, including San Francisco, Boston, Los Angeles, and Detroit, have started their own reparations commissions. One of the first known reparationists was Callie House, who toured the nation advocating for reparations in the 1890s. But never in this nation's history has the movement to heal the harms of enslavement, institutionalized racism, and the system of white supremacy seemed so strong. The topic remains untouchable for most elected officials, and the call for reparations has not yet garnered widespread public support. Polling shows that most Californians agree that black fellow citizens are still suffering from the damage done by slavery and Jim Crow, but they still do not support cash reparations. The California Legislative Black Caucus has introduced a package of proposals for bills that do not include 1 penny of cash compensation, restitution, or repair. Governor Newsom and other lawmakers have distanced themselves from the concept of cash payments. While Newsom is right, cash alone will not repair our collective harm, the state's goofy legislative package ignoring monetary payments is disingenuous. California lawmakers need to step up and put a reparations bill for cash payments on the table. The issue of how it is funded, the timeline, or whether it impacts our current budget challenges can be addressed. But we must strike while the iron is hot, or the window of opportunity will pass us by. If you agree that it's time for our lawmakers to add a bill enacting cash payments to their lineup, call them at 916-319-3868 and say, if it doesn't include cash, it ain't reparations. That's 916-319-3868. Tell him Callie House sent you. From Bruce's Beach to the California Task Force, the Golden State is a trailblazer when it comes to reparations. The world is watching. We must rise to the historical moment and set a precedent for cash payments along with legislative remedies and policies addressing the systemic badges of slavery and Jim Crow. We must insist on measures significant enough to help close the racial wealth gap. California must stand for cash, and the time for reparations is now. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dominique DePrima. We welcome your comments.
Oh, na, 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 na. Oh, na, 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 na. Oh, na, 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 na. Good vibration, yeah. That's the positive vibes and we creating, yeah. The sounds that make you feel right, we keep it blazing, yeah. Forever shining this light, we keep it blazing, yeah. Boy, forever shine in this light. Hey, thank the Lord, my cup is full and running over. All who never like we are gonna love we know.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, and we are honored to have you hanging out with us today on our program. What an amazing and busy first hour that was. Born of all the breaking news, which I'll recap for you in just a moment in case you have not heard. There is some major breaking news today. In this business, it's either feast or famine. Some days there's nothing to talk about, and other days there's too much stuff to talk about. I shouldn't say nothing. There's always stuff to talk about. But some days are busier than others. All days are not created equal. In this hour, former NASA engineer Harleen Kaur is the co-founder and CEO of Ground News. Ground News, a new mobile app designed to fight disinformation and bias in news. She'll tell us all about that innovation as we move through this hour. But how timely is it to have Harleen Kaur on in this hour talking about this new app, Ground News, given all the breaking news that's happening on the ground right now. In case you've just tuned in, a few things we were talking about a bit in our first hour, and we'll let Harleen sort of walk through this hour with us and let us know how this app actually works and how it can help you avoid the disinformation about these stories. Let me just start with this. In case you missed our first hour, we started out talking today about all the drama at NBC News. They had announced on Friday that they were hiring Ronna McDaniel, former RNC chair, who got pushed out of the RNC by Mr. Trump because he wanted his daughter-in-law, wife of Eric Trump, to be part of a triumvirate of people running the RNC. So it's one thing to have had, his daughter and son-in-law, Jared and Ivana, working for him inside the White House. And in this iteration, he has his daughter-in-law now running the RNC. And they've already announced that money coming into the RNC is first going to his PAC to help pay his legal bills. So that's one of the first decisions they've announced, that money going into the RNC is going first to his PAC to help pay his legal bills. That's what happens when your daughter-in-law is running the operation. So we started today talking about this decision by NBC News, which blew up in their faces over the weekend, to hire the former RNC chair pushed out by Trump as a new contributor, as an analyst, a paid analyst at NBC. And all hell broke loose. She appeared yesterday on Meet the Press, and Chuck Todd, former host of that program, and other colleagues at MSNBC and NBC have gone in. And so the bosses at the network are backing up now off of that commitment to hire her as an analyst, because as chair of the RNC, she lied and obfuscated and refused to admit that Joe Biden had won the election. And so that story is how we started today's show, talking about disinformation that Ms. McDaniel was spreading when she ran the RNC. And then there's the breaking news of today. Donald Trump, two big stories. Number one, a federal appeals court, 5-judge panel, has ruled that he can reduce his $454 million bond payment that was due today. They reduced it from $454 to $175. I did the math on that. That is a 68% reduction. I just had Ben Crump, the famed civil rights attorney, on this program, and I asked Ben, have you ever had a black client who a court gave a 68% reduction in a fine and then gave him 10 more days to pay the fine? So Trump will cover the $175. He couldn't cover the $454, so they dropped it down to $175. He escapes the game. That story is out. In the other Trump case, there are a bunch of them, right? In the other Trump case regarding the sex scandal and Stormy Daniels and paying her to be quiet, the judges ruled in that case that trial will start April 15. He tried to get the judge, his lawyers did, to get the judge to push that case back. This case is brought by the brother DA, Alvin Bragg, in New York City. The first case was brought by the sister AG in New York, Letitia James. So black folk at the epicenter of both of these cases. But his sex scandal case will, in fact, start April 15. His lawyers failed in getting that case pushed back, so that case will take off pretty swiftly here. And then there's the news that the UN Security Council, with the U.S. abstaining, has passed a resolution for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And Israel has just now responded to that vote. They have canceled plans for a diplomatic visit to this country as tensions are flaring over this UN vote demanding this Gaza ceasefire. The U.S. abstained, and Israel has now canceled plans for a diplomatic trip to this country. So they're already expressing their outrage over this vote. So there you have it. Plenty of breaking news. Now we'll figure out how all this works with this new mobile app called Ground News, which is designed to help you weed through and fight through the disinformation about stories just like these. We'll talk to the co-founder and CEO of Ground News, Harleen Kaur, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Attorney Joe Cordell.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
1455 Frazee Road, Suite 1050, San Diego, California, 92108. CordellCordell.com.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Pizza's here.
Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and talk to your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Who do you trust to get at the truth?
Tavis Smiley.
That's who. The conversation continues right now.
Well, that's exactly what this conversation is about. Who do you trust to get at the truth? And the promo says Tavis Smiley. I try to do that every day. That's my goal around here, to try to get at the truth. But I'm not the only one. There are some others in this space who care about this distinction between the truth and the lies, between the truth and disinformation and misinformation. Former NASA engineer Harleen Kaur is our guest in this hour. She is the co-founder and CEO of Ground News, a mobile app designed to fight disinformation and news bias. Harleen, I'm glad to have you on this program. How are you today?
I'm good, Tavis. I'm so excited to be on here.
I'm glad to have you. Let me start before I get into these how this app works, this mobile app, and some of the breaking news stories that I just shared with the audience and you, that I want you to sort of walk us through vis-a-vis how the mobile app works and helping us understand these stories better. Give me more about your background. I mentioned you're a former NASA engineer, and this is a long way from being a NASA engineer. Maybe not so far, but tell me about your backstory and how you went from that to this.
Yeah. So yeah, I am not somebody who's a journalist. I'm not somebody who's a media person. As you said, I started my career working for my dream job, which is working for NASA in Washington D.C. at Goddard Space Flight Center. And through my career, I've worked mostly in engineering jobs. I've worked with jet engines. I've worked with other aerospace stuff. But this is something that was a bit of a calling for me. It's a personal problem that I was struggling with, and I found it mind-boggling as an engineer that we can take pictures on Pluto, but we can't figure out what's exactly happening here on Earth, which is figure out what's exactly to believe in news. So I wanted to create a simple solution for somebody like me who has 10 minutes to read the news and really get my head around what's going on in news, but sift through the bias. Because one thing that it's becoming worse and worse is depending on who you listen to and what you read, it really forms your opinion. So the solution that we found at Ground News was simply, instead of sharing with you news story from one single perspective or one single news source, we will share with you all the different news sources that are covering it, and you can very much compare the different narratives and make the mind up for yourself. So I guess the engineer with me wanted the critical thinking to lie with the reader, as opposed to somebody telling us how to think about an issue.
That raises a few questions. Let me start with this first one. Tell me more about this calling. And when you suggested that word resonate, excuse me, that word resonates with me. I tell the audience all the time that what you're looking for in life is not a job. When you're young and you're just getting started, of course, you take whatever job you can take, even if it's at McDonald's. You take a job. I get that. But what you're aiming for as you move through life is to find your way into your calling, your avocation, that reason that you were placed here on planet Earth. And so when you say that this project for you became a calling, tell me more about that first.
Yeah, no, absolutely right that yes, we could do a lot of jobs to make money and make our ends meet, but there are certain things that you want to do besides making money. So for me, for Ground News, I left a job that was comfortable and worked on it for 4 years where before I saw a single dollar come into my bank account, so no salary whatsoever. But it was just a problem that I thought all of us are struggling with, and it's a problem so core that if we can't agree on what the problems are, how are we going to solve it as a humanity? So regardless of bigger things like, I don't know, climate change to crime to immigration, any pick up any issue, it's become a divisive issue. Like sports have become a divisive issue. So how do we just get information, get everybody back on the same page, stop being divided, and start solving problems together? And I think the step one is just having access to the same information, so we can all at least understand the baseline that this is what we are working towards, this is what's happening in the world, which is it, and then yeah, let us all take roles in solving those problems. So yeah, it was definitely calling for me.
I was hanging out, excuse me, I was hanging out the other day and talking to my friend Bill Maher, who we all know from HBO's Real Time. Bill and I are friends and have been for many years, and we argue and fight about issues, but we're friends. And Bill and I were together the other day, and we were talking about, he's much more aggressive about this than I am. I mean, it's part of his stand-up, as a fact. As a matter of fact, where he talks about the dumbed-down demos in our country, that the demos is really just dumbed down. And Bill and I agree on that. He just, again, goes much harder at it than I do. And I thought about Bill and my conversation with Bill a few days ago, talking about, again, the dumbed-down demos, when you use the phrase critical thinking. So if Bill were in this conversation right now, he and I both together might challenge you on whether or not fellow citizens are in fact interested in engaging in what you call critical thinking. Now, again, as a host of this program every day for 3 hours, I hope that what I'm doing, as I say all the time, is making my audience the smartest person in their circle of friends. I hope that I'm helping them engage in critical thinking. I recognize that I don't have a monopoly on the truth. I believe there is the truth, and I believe there is the way to the truth. And you got to be humble enough to know that you don't have access to all of the truth. And yet I believe that I have a duty, an obligation. Speaking of calling and vocation, my calling is to share what I see. To share the truth that I do know, and be humble enough to understand that I don't have a monopoly on the truth. And yet, It's more difficult to do that in a society, in a world where the demos has been dumbed down and people seem not to be interested in critical thinking. Why do I say that? I was just discussing this in our first hour, talking about NBC News hiring, saying they were going to hire Ms. McDaniel, the former head of the RNC. We live in a world where everybody's in their silos. Fox News has its audience, MSNBC has its audience, CNN has its audience, et cetera, et cetera. We are in these silos. So where is the evidence that you see that fellow citizens, never mind what your mobile app Ground News allows them to do, are interested in critical thinking? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's a very good question because yes, I think all of us find it more comfortable listening to or reading or whatever format you consume news in to ingest information that you agree with, right? If it's much more comfortable that, hey, this is what my views are, and this news channel or this paper or this newsletter that I subscribe to tells me exactly very similar to what I want to hear. Then yeah, I want to listen to that, and its critical thinking part of it is very, very uncomfortable. And as you said, the word humble, I think yes, you have to be humble enough to recognize that you don't know everything, and there is more than one way to think about an issue. There's more than one way the story can be covered. So where we see the evidence, yes, I think you're absolutely right that people have picked their spot on the spectrum, and especially news sources have recognized that, hey, if we want to make any money, which is becoming more and more difficult as a news source, then we just have to speak to one segment of audience and just keep speaking to them. But I think there's what Ground News' hypothesis is that there is a growing number of people who recognize the problem. I think it's becoming more and more at the forefront, and especially with the advent of social media and the algorithms, and people are realizing that, well, it's a silo, it's a bubble that I'm living with. And then when this bubble collides with somebody in the real world, or when the bubble gets burst in terms of an outcome that's an election or anything that happens in the real world, or I run into my neighbor, my uncle, or whoever it is who is thinking very different than me, then am I missing any information? I think there are people who actually are realizing this, and those are the people who come to your show, who are coming to Ground News and want to actively figure out and actively challenge themselves, even if it's uncomfortable, to do that critical thinking.
Who benefits when we don't think critically about the issues that our nation must confront every day?
I think anybody who doesn't want you to change your mind is who benefits. Yeah. I think it's as simple as that. So if you are a corporation and you want to keep making profit the way you do, and you don't want the board to be stirred, then yes, why would you want people to change? And the other part of it is, I think, rage sells, hate sells, and yet in this ad-supported model where people are just captive to the certain audience, certain platforms, then of course you want to be just served, or you want to be serving them exactly what people want to see, make them more angry, make them click on more things that put them in the same bubble, and that's who's benefiting from it.
Yeah. So I mentioned at least three or four, but we'll pick three breaking news stories today that I want you to sort of walk us through and let me know what's on. I'll try to follow you on my phone here. But give me a sense of what we're seeing on the mobile app, Ground News, and how it helps us to better understand these stories. I mentioned two Trump stories, one being the Trump fraud case, where he has now been allowed to reduce his $454 million bond payment down to $175. I mentioned the Trump sex scandal case that will now commence on April 15th, according to the judge. No delay in that case, no longer a delay. And I mentioned the ceasefire vote that just happened in the UN Security Council with the U.S. abstaining. Pick one of those. We'll do all three, but pick which one you want to start with and tell me how and what I'm seeing on the mobile app that will help me better understand and follow this story from a number of sources.
Sure. So one thing worth pointing out, Tavis, it's great that you're using mobile app, but if any of your audience doesn't use a mobile app, we have a website as well. Just it's a bigger real estate. They can go to ground.news and follow it there. So let's start with the UN Security Council story. Of course, it's a hugely important story. And on a normal news platform, what you would see is you would read the headline and say, hey, U.S. Security Council passes Gaza ceasefire resolution after U.S. abstains, and then read the paragraph, read the article about it. On ground news, if you come to ground news and read this story, there are currently, as of this minute, 171 news sources all over the world covering this news story, given this is of global importance. There are 171 news sources covering it. In terms of, given this is not a partisan story, this is not a divisive story, the distribution of this, the news sources covering it is pretty much even. It's 34% left, 27% right, 30% center. So pretty much across the spectrum, this is of importance, and the news sources are covering this story. And then the same geographically, we see out of this 171, across the globe, right from of course happening in Israel, across the Middle East, Europe, Asia. I see South China Morning Post. I see German newspapers, and then all across the globe, coming to North America. All the news sources are covering it. This story, given it's something that highlights that it's a momentous decision in terms of U.S. not exercising its veto. That's why you see all the news sources covering it. I think reading it on ground news, the extra information that you get is not just reading the U.S. perspective of the story, but across the globe, how different news sources are covering it. How you can read things about why Israel criticizes the Security Council resolution. You can read about what are the main components of the Security Council resolution, what's the impact on Gaza's civilian population of this resolution. So all of that is weaved together for you in one place, instead of you trying to figure out and piece that information together. If you wanted a more rounded view on that story, and you can get that on Ground News.
So if you are near your phone right now and you've downloaded the Ground News app, or if you are at your computer and you go to the Ground News website, you can literally follow Harleen and I in real time right now in this conversation, talking about these major news stories. And how it's being covered specifically and uniquely by Ground News. What you heard us say a moment ago with regard to the UN Security Council vote calling for an immediate ceasefire, only because the U.S. abstained. You heard us say 171 sources are covering this story around the globe. So you get a chance to see who is interested in this story, but you also get a chance to see how they're framing the story. And that's what I want to talk about when we come forward. Before I move to the two Trump stories, Harleen, you got a couple minutes here as we step aside to take a look and tell me how you see the story being covered distinctly different by these distinctly different ways, I should say, by these 171 sources. I know everybody's frame or spin, as we called it around here, is not exactly the same. I know what's being written about in Jerusalem ain't what's being written necessarily in New York City or in China or in Australia. Just trying to get a sense. It's clear that everybody is fascinated by the story, given that the U.S. abstained and the vote went through, because everybody around the globe is covering it. But what different frames are you seeing on this major breaking story about the UN ceasefire vote? We'll talk about that, and then we'll work through a couple of Trump stories and see what Ground News is giving us. And again, you can follow Harleen and I in real time as we talk about Ground News, this mobile app designed to help you fight disinformation and news bias, and more importantly, just get a variety of sources that you can look at. It's never good to be a single source listener, a single source reader, a single source viewer. More with Harleen Kaur when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free Coin Collector Bonus Pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Donald Trump is in a Manhattan courtroom today regarding the New York hush money case. The criminal case involving the alleged hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels days before the 2016 presidential election has been delayed by the judge for 30 days because of new evidence. The judge today is expected to set a final date for the trial to begin, which will likely be towards the end of April. Crystal James is the new police chief for the University of Michigan Police Department in Ann Arbor. She's the first black person to hold the job and is the first female police chief on the school's 3 campuses. James was previously the deputy chief for the university on its Dearborn campus. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Compassion sponsorship means food, health care, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
USC and UCLA are back on the court tonight in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Both are at home for second-round games. UCLA takes on Creighton, 5:30 tip-off on ESPN2. The winner advances to the Sweet 16 to face defending national champion LSU in the Albany Regional. USC and Juju Watkins play Kansas tonight. Another sellout crowd is expected at the Galen Center, 7 p.m. tip-off on ESPN. The winner advances to the Sweet 16 in the Portland Regional. Arizona is the only Pac-12 conference team left in the NCAA men's tournament. Arizona has a Sweet 16 matchup Thursday night against Clemson at Crypto.com. Crypto is the site of the West Regional Finals. The Clippers are expecting to have Russell Westbrook back for tonight's home game against Indiana. Westbrook missed the last 12 games with a broken left hand. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Tavis Smiley Show is now syndicated all across America, from Los Angeles to New York City,
and plenty of places in between.
But only in LA can you hear Tavis Smiley when it's convenient for you, 9 a.m. or 9 p.m.
Take your pick.
It's Tavis Smiley on the 9s, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Shop the closeout event at Lowe's. Get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, save an extra $100 when you spend $999 or more on all major appliances. Valid 1/4/24 to 1/24/24. Selection varies by location while supplies last. See Lowe's.com for details.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@kbla1580.com. That's advertising@kbla1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you black.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Harleen Kaur, who is the co-founder and CEO of a mobile app designed to fight disinformation and news bias. It's called Ground News. I see all of you, not all of you, a whole bunch of you have logged on and you're following this conversation as I invited you to do. In case you've just tuned in, let me invite you to download the app on your phone, Ground News, right now, or go to their website, Ground News, and you can literally follow Harleen Kaur and I in this conversation right now in real time as we talk about the breaking news stories of the day and the way this particular app allows you to access stories and, frankly, get to the truth in ways that you have not been able to do heretofore. A funny story. Last night, Harleen, I was coming from an event last night. I'd spoken at an event and popped into a 7-Eleven convenience store to grab something right quick on the way home. And I saw this young lady sitting in her car as I was walking into the store. Her name is Tamika. She may be listening now. But I saw Tamika last night walking into the store. And I must say, Tamika reeked of alcohol, and she was high as a kite. No question about it. Tamika had something. And she saw me walk in this store, and before I knew it, she jumped out of this car and followed me into this store and jumped in my arms, and I hugged her. And she hugged me back, and she was telling me she loved me, and she listens to me all the time and has watched me throughout my career, and wanted to buy me what I was picking up in the store, wanted to pay for it. I said, no, I appreciate it, Tamika. I've got it. Just as sweet as she could be. But she just kept saying, oh, my God, you're so smart. You're so smart. You know everything. I said, no. I'm not that smart. I don't know everything. I was saying to her, I just have tricks. And one of my tricks is I just have multiple sources. I'm not smarter than my audience. I just have a lot of sources. And one of the tricks, now you know, is Ground News. So you go to Ground News, and they tell you how this story is being covered all around the world by everybody. And so before I come on the air every day, of course, I'm reading all kinds of stuff. But I've got great producers, number one, which makes me smarter or sound smarter. Great producers. Thank you. And I have a lot of sources. But now you can be just as smart or just as learned as I am. Now that you know my trick, one of my many tricks, which is going to Ground News and seeing how these stories are covered all around the world. So when I get on the air, you can follow me and know as much or more than I know if you know the tricks that I use to stay in the know. And one of those, again, is Ground News. It's a mobile app that helps you see stories from all different perspectives in one place. I ain't got to go to 171 different websites. It's all right there for me, and I can see how this story is being covered around the world. So, in case you just tuned in, we were talking about the ceasefire. By the way, Tamika, I appreciate the love yesterday and hope you're checking us out today. But I love that. I mean, every one of us, let me just pause for a second. We all want to be appreciated, acknowledged, and affirmed for what we're trying to do every day. And I'm no different because I'm not human and divine. I'm human just like you. And it means something when people see you. And even when they're not completely lucid, they recognize you and they know that they like you. They know that they like you and that they listen to you and they watch you and they appreciate the truth that you try to tell. So I thank Tamika for that experience last night. It made my day on the way home last night. That said, Harleen, we were talking about the UN resolution that passed a couple hours ago now. They passed this resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. abstains, and this story is one of the biggest stories of the day. It's being covered around the globe. You mentioned moments ago, at the time at least, there were 171
Yeah, it's 202 sources now.
I was going to say,
going around.
I see it jumping. So now it's 202.
Yeah.
So this is a major story around the world. Give me some sense, as best you can, just top line for me, the ways in which you see this story being covered and the differences in that coverage, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the way, such a beautiful story, Tavis. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, thanks for making sharing that ground news can make you smarter. I really like that angle. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Give everybody the information. Going back to the story. So one of the ways you can see very clearly is if I look at the Arab world newspapers around the Middle East, especially Al Jazeera, the Egyptian newspapers, a few others, they're really, really focusing on the holy month of Ramadan. And they're focusing on the civilian population and what it would mean to have this ceasefire for the civilian population. So they have been, the numbers, the most conservative numbers is 32,000 deaths, most of which are women and children. But having this ceasefire would mean that the humanitarian crisis would be exacerbated, and that's what the Arab world is focusing on, that the terrible suffering that was going on. And the humanitarian aid, that's the other one. The trucks, there were loads of trucks of humanitarian aid that weren't able to enter. They're hoping that having a ceasefire that would allow these trucks to go in. And whereas if I look at the Israeli newspapers, as you said, that already Netanyahu has followed through on the threat of not visiting the U.S. They are saying that they're very disappointed, and they are talking about political divisions in the UN, and they are also saying that, hey, you are not criticizing Hamas enough. As you can imagine, the emotions are very, very raw following what happened on October 7th, that they are saying that this resolution totally doesn't do that. That is acknowledging the atrocities by Hamas enough and just focusing on the ceasefire. So yeah, it's the same resolution, of course, but how it's been perceived across the different geographies is what ground can really highlight for you.
Yeah.
It even showcases things like how have China and Russia's position over Israel-Palestine conflict evolved over time. So China and Russia have traditionally been more supportive of Palestine in the conflict, often criticizing Israel. However, their recent abstention from voting on ceasefire resolution suggests a possible shift in their stance.
Yeah.
So you can also gather that, again, going across the news sources. We are, by the way, one of the few platforms that still show the Russian state media, because again, our intent is to show as many different perspectives as possible, and for you to make up your mind that, hey, do you want to believe them or not? But yeah, this is very much across the globe. If you fly across the globe, how the story's been covered.
So I'm getting all kinds of responses from listeners who are on your site now or on the app and following this conversation. And one of them says, Tavis, the site is very interesting. She has a bias distribution meter, but I love her blind spot function. She has a bias distribution meter, but I love her blind spot function. When we come forward, we'll let Harleen explain to you what this listener is talking about, the bias distribution meter on these stories and the blind spot function that this particular listener loves. We'll talk about that as we continue our dialogue with the co-founder and CEO of Ground News, this mobile app that helps me and helps you now cover stories all around the globe in a matter of minutes and helps you fight through the disinformation and news bias. And now Tamika knows my secret. I really ain't that smart. I just got good resources. Sorry, Tamika, you're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, And I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce.
This election year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the place for politics, unapologetically progressive politics. And we've got two of the best and brightest to help you cut through all the noise. Weekdays at 1 p.m., it's A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nee Corte. And at 4 p.m., it's Areva Martin in Real Time. He's the university professor and distinguished member of the White House Correspondents Association. She's a best-selling author and Harvard-trained civil rights lawyer. And they are both here every day to help guide you through all the this year, because you know it's going to get deep. Get your politics on weekday afternoons at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. with A More Perfect Union, hosted by Dr. Nee Corte and Areva Martin in Real Time, only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your flag.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Yeah. Miles and I, my board out, were laughing during that break talking about Tamika last night. There was a scene. Tamika was running around the 7-Eleven store. Tavis Smiley's in here. Tavis, we love Tavis. All around the 7-Eleven store last night. She jumped in front of me when I got in line and put out the phone and tried to tap it to pay for my stuff. It was a scene, but I we were laughing about it. Anyway, I love that sister. Maya Angelou once said, some of you know, that people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. I've never forgotten that. They may forget what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that's my sharing to each of you listening right now. Just know that people will never forget how you made them feel. If they ever see you, they'll let you know about it, good or bad. I digress. Okay, Harleen Kaur, tell me about this bias distribution meter and the blind spot function.
Yeah. So bias distribution meter is very much my geeky attempt, being an engineer, to show how news is being covered across the news landscape. So we just show a chart and we show from left to right which are the news sources that are covering it, and within a quick glance you can see if left and right are covering it equally, or is it that there is an unproportional coverage on one side or the other. So within a second, you can see if the news story is unproportionately covered by left or right, and a story that is covered unproportionately by left or right, that's what we call a blind spot.
Yeah.
So if you were only reading news sources that were on the left, if you were only reading news sources on the right, then you would have totally missed this news story. And again, your perception of what's happening in this world might have been totally different than somebody who came across this story.
So on these Trump stories, I'm watching my time is getting away from me, and I want to spend a few minutes before I lose you talking about the way that everyday people can help with the truth in these news stories by a function on ground news. We'll talk about that before I lose you. But I mentioned these two Trump stories, again, two big ones. The sex scandal trial will go forward April 15, and the appellate court has reduced his bond from $454 to $175, a 68% reduction in his bond. I digress on that for now. But speaking of left and right and that bias meter, what are you seeing about the way these Trump stories are being covered right now?
Yeah, so these are perfect examples of what's called blind spots. So especially the Stormy Daniels story, the hush money story, has only been covered out of 29 sources by 3 right sources as of now. So it's the D.C. Publication called Durango Herald and Reforma.com. But apart from that, none of the major players on the right have covered this story as of now. This might change, but as of now, only three out of almost 30 have covered it. And the other one as well, the Bond story, a bit more coverage. It's interesting, as we were talking, there's been more right coverage, but still only 20% coverage on the right that has come. So it's very interesting if it's a Biden story that's covered by more right, and then if it's a Trump story that gets covered more left. So that's kind of the new landscape that we live in.
It is one of the great functions of this this mobile app called Ground News. Again, all my tricks are being exposed today, how I figure this stuff out so swiftly and so quickly. But and Harleen makes a great point. We'll continue when we come forward here. But she makes a great point that it's not just what it's not just who covers it. It's what they cover. It's all the above, right? So that you heard her say a moment ago on the Trump Stormy Daniels story, the sex scandal case going forward April 15, at the moment, of all the sources that have covered it, only 3 are right sources. Only 3 sources in the right-wing media have covered it. My point is, it's not even about them lying to you in the story. It's not even about the disinformation. You got my point right. They're not even covering it. They're not even talking about it. So that's how this disinformation, this misinformation, this bias in journalism, so-called journalism exists, that they're not even covering the story. So you figure all this stuff out. Who's covering it, who's not covering it, what they're saying, what they're not saying, the spin, the frame, the lie, all of that by going to one site. Now you know, it's called Ground News. The co-founder and CEO of Ground News is our guest, Harleen Kaur. When we come forward, a few other thoughts for her, a few other comments, rather, I want to get from her to a few questions I have. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're gonna feel a puff of air.
Jong's Optometry has set their sights on staffing up.
Try the next line. Hey, Kim, can you tell our 2 o'clock we're running 15 behind? Sorry, we're a bit backed up today.
He needs an optometric technician to keep an eye on it all.
Where are the dilation drops?
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
He's rooting for everybody black.
Everybody black.
More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Yeah, so Miles, now Tamika's a star. Everybody's got Tamika text and messages and posts. I'm reading one now that says, with Tamika gratitude, Tavis, thanks for the interview with Harleen Kaur of Ground News. I'm checking out the app right now. I love that. With Tamika gratitude. She's checking out the app right now. Other messages coming in about Tamika. So, Tamika, the people love you, and I love you as well. Okay, Harleen, I've got about 3 or 4 minutes left in this conversation, and so this is not news to you, and not news to this brilliant audience, that the Trayvon Martin story, we had Ben Crump on earlier in today's show. Ben Crump, of course, the attorney for Trayvon Martin. Most of you heard about Ben Crump. I knew Ben for many years prior to, but most of you heard about Ben Crump when the Trayvon Martin story became a national story. But let me be very clear about this. That Trayvon Martin story only became a national story because of black people. Let me be abundantly clear about this. It was black people. It was black people in the news, black people on the radio, like we are right now, who kept raising this issue. The mainstream media was late. The corporate media was late, very late, on the Trayvon Martin story. Same true for the Jenna 6. There are any number of stories on which the mainstream media is oftentimes late. And what I love about Ground News is that it also allows everyday people to help with the truth in the news. Harleen, talk about that part.
Yeah, this is exactly what you're saying, Tavis, that we highlight the stories that are underreported by left or right. So you're talking about Trayvon Martin's story. We see a clear theme that if on the right there is wrongful conviction, police brutality, or even falling crime rate stories are underreported repeatedly. But left is not all saints. They also underreport stories like whenever there is crime hikes or there is retail theft. So our job is to just showcase these stories. So if you were reading Ground News, you would have seen these stories much earlier. And for example, there is a story about sentencing for 6 former Mississippi police officers who tortured 2 black men that have not been covered by right at all. Very, very little coverage. That if you came to Ground News, you would have seen that story.
That's the story about the Goon Squad. They called them the Goon Squad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The Goon Squad story. So very little coverage on the right. It's actually just a German newspaper and ET that are covering that story, but none of the mainstream right sources are covering. So, but it's our job to highlight those stories that are underreported and bringing it in front of public consciousness.
Well, I'm highlighting this right now. Speaking of public consciousness, I'm highlighting it now because this is going to be a heck of a year. It already is politically, and I'm doing my part, as others are doing their part, to try to seek the truth and to speak the truth and to stand on the truth and, frankly, to stay with the truth. That's my role. But as media outlets narrow their perspective and their range of coverage, as we discussed in this hour, it's becoming impossible to consult a single news story for a well-rounded view on the issues that we're going to be navigating this year. And so I repeat once again, the trick is out. You know how I do it every day. Ground News helps, and there are other sources that I go to as well, but this is a good one. So for all of you who want to be in the know this year and want to not be a single source listener or viewer, I recommend Ground News. It's a mobile app and a website designed to help you fight disinformation and news bias. And many of you have already checked it out during this hour, and I'm grateful for that, as is our guest, the co-founder and CEO of Ground News, Harleen Kaur. Harleen, I'm glad you walked away from that job. I know you didn't make any money for the first 4 years, but I'm glad you walked away. I'm glad you followed your calling, your vocation, and all the rest of us are being benefited by that. So thank you. Good to have you on this program.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform to speak about Ground News, Tavis. I'm eternally grateful. Thank you.
It is my great honor. Thank you. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica